I work for my hometown's local paper as a reporter. Being a small Appalachian community, any newsworthy happenings in those parts occurred sparingly. So, when an opportunity arose to cover a paranormal group investigating a nearby national forest, I thought it'd make a compelling story. Known as SCAR, Supernatural Cryptid Anomaly Researchers, they were filming a docuseries after having modest success with a previous documentary. SCAR gained some notoriety when they released strange, unknown recordings they captured on an expedition in western Pennsylvania that even got attention from some mainstream news outlets. They conducted expeditions from spring to fall, primarily visiting locations throughout the northeast US, where they looked into purported stories of cryptid, hauntings, and other unexplained phenomena. SCAR was here looking into Bigfoot reports, which I learned came out of this area fairly often. I never really dwelled on whether such a creature could exist, but their arguments and hypotheses admittedly kept me open to the possibility. Our base camp was a primitive site in a remote section of the forest that had no cell phone reception and was miles from the nearest house or paved road. The team was quite impressed with my prowess and know-how, probably figuring a young woman like myself would be out of their element in the wilderness. In actuality, I've always been an outdoor enthusiast and will participate in anything involving camping and hiking. The team consisted of 5 individuals who doubled themselves as ordinary people exploring the unknown and unexplained. SCAR was founded by Braden, the director, Shane, their tech and equip guru, and Corey, who performed most SCAR's PRs and communicative duties. Mitchell wrote the show and organized expeditions, and Devon, their main camera operator, were younger than the 3 founders and closer to my age. What I found particularly interesting was how these individuals couldn't be any more different from each other, appearing to have nothing in common beside a mutual infatuation for the unknown. Their little team was certainly a testament to how people can still have common interests, despite coming from all walks of life. We didn't do much the first day, which was mostly spent setting up camp, filming the team members, answering questions, and reciting monologues. That night was relatively uneventful. After setting up shop, we cooked dinner and finalized our itinerary for the next 2 days. Mitch, Devin, Shane, and myself briefly ventured out to get a feel for the area and to do a few of what we were called vocalizations and wood knocks methods they believed are how Bigfoot communicates. They didn't get any response, and we called it a night after about an hour. I interviewed each team member on the second day, and was also questioned by Braden for their docuseries. We then scouted the spot where our night ops investigation would take place, and walked a stretch of riverbank looking for prints. I was impressed at how much research and preparation went into these outings, and while the degree of belief in Bigfoot varied among each individual, their professionalism and organization were exemplary. I actually became really excited about the night investigation. We split in 2 groups. The mobile team, Mitch, Devin, myself, and static team, Shane, Corey, Braden. We would hike to a swampy marsh, while the static team parked alongside a road 1 to 2 miles away and periodically emitted call blasts, playing amplified animals/alleged Bigfoot calls over a speaker. We'd post up at the swamp for a few hours before bushwhacking back to the road and reunite with the static team. We were dropped off at 11 p.m. and took roughly 90 minutes to reach the swamp, where we hunkered down for an hour before making any knocks or vocalizations. Armed with red headlamps, digital recorders, a camcorder, and thermal imaging monocular, Mitch and Devin thoroughly scanned our surroundings, looking for any signs of movements when they weren't filming. Intrigued by their use of red lights, Mitch, who I might add was the most attractive among the 5 of them, explained many animals couldn't perceive red light, and it was easier to see in the dark with than white. The teams communicated with radios that, on Mitch's insistence, we only had one of, which got pretty spotty at times due to the distance between our groups. We stayed at the swamp until 2:30 a.m., during which Mitch and Devin did a few vocalizations and wood knocks. Remarkably, they had some potential activity. A faint groaning howl after Mitch did a call, 2 potential knocks in response to one of Devin's, and a deep, woeful wail about 20 minutes after a call blast that both teams heard. Ironically, I wound up being more animate about the responses we received than Mitch and Devin. While encouraged by the activity, they reminded me there were a million other things those noises could be, and probably were, before a Bigfoot. Using power lines crossing the swamp as a visual reference, since they ran parallel in the direction we were going, we bushwhacked over a mile into the woods before reaching a brook that Mitch said marked our halfway point to the road. We stayed at this spot for another hour, doing more calls and knocks, including my first Bigfoot call, but had no additional activity. It wouldn't be uncommon for them to figure out they're not communicating with one of their own, Mitch told me after doing a set of wood knocks. So, unless they move in for a closer look, they'll pretty much go dark the rest of the night. We stayed at the brook until 4:30 a.m., when the lack of additional activity prompted Mitch and Devin to call it a night. Everyone was tired, and the possible activity from earlier ultimately made these night ops a success. We found a crossable section of the brook that Devin and I traversed without incident. Mitch, however, took a misstep and sank up to his thighs in mud. "My foot's caught under like a root or something," Mitch said in a flustered tone, unable to shake himself free. "Yeah, I'm stuck. I'm gonna need like a rope or something." By Mitch's estimates, we were 20 to 30 minutes from the road. Despite having reservations about leaving him alone, he insisted Devin and I meet the others. After informing the static team of our dilemma, Devin and I headed out, leaving Mitch with the radio. "I give him a lot of credit for staying there by himself. Stuck like that, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the woods," I said to Devin, who nodded in agreement. "Yeah, he'll be fine. This isn't the worst predicament I've seen him in," he replied with a slight smirk forming across his face. "I noticed how you were looking at him, though." "What do you mean?" I asked, blushing while trying to play dumb, despite knowing exactly what Devin meant. "Come on, don't bullshit a bullshitter," Devin said teasingly. I laughed bashfully, thankful we were having the discussion in the middle of a remote forest where nobody could eavesdrop. "Maybe I should have gone back by myself, so you guys could have gotten to know each other more." "Shut up," I uttered giddily, playfully pushing Devin as we walked. "I am serious," he said in between chuckles, "but there's no way he'd let one of us walk this alone. But the good news for you is, I think he's also interested." Devin eventually changed the subject and told me a few stories about some of the shenanigans he and Mitch got into, while also noting the irony of Mitch forcing them to take one radio. "Shane wants each team to have at least 2 radios, specifically in case something like this, us separating, happens," Devin said, chuckling. Mitch doesn't like bringing two because they both go off at once when someone says something. He thinks noises like that will deter anything nearby, especially since he's the kind of person who always has to be right. The others won't let him live this one down. We walked for another 15 minutes when something caught Devin's eye.
Is it a person?
He whispered, coming to an abrupt halt. About 10 yards in front of us was a slender human shape standing with her torso backwardly bent across a narrow tree stump. The moonlight only revealed its vague outline, which didn't react to our presence. Despite feeling uneasy, we warily approached the motionless figure and gasped in fright as its details became clearer. It was indeed a person, a man to be precise. He was held in this awkwardly bent posture by a tree stump's narrow pointed tip, which was impaled through his chest. It was hard to infer much about the man based on his clothes. Light beige cargo pants, boots, a forest green button-down, most of which were deeply bloodstained. The top half of his head was missing, and the man's mouth hung agape, being permanently frozen mid-scream.
We have to call someone,
Devin said, staring nervously at his cell phone, which had no bars.
Whatever killed this guy did it recently, like tonight recently, and is definitely still nearby.
What about Mitch? I asked, which only made Devin, who was visibly shaken by the grisly sight, even more uneasy.
He can't stay out there alone,
Devin said, unable to take his eyes off the body.
We should get back to him, get back to the brook and take it from there.
We reversed course and hurried back to Mitch, speculating about what living in these woods could have killed that man along the way.
I think he may have been with the Forest Service or one of those branches,
Devin remarked.
I saw a rifle on the ground next to his pack, which had some kind of logo on it. I couldn't see what it was though, but it looked pretty official.
Why didn't you take it with us? I asked about the rifle, coming to a halt.
It's a crime scene,
Devin quickly replied.
We'd probably get in more trouble if we touched anything. I didn't want to say anything, but...
But what? I asked, staring sharply at Devin, who was clearly unnerved over what he was about to say. Devin sighed.
Pretty sure I saw a footprint or two,
Devin revealed before he resumed walking.
Human footprints. Barefoot human footprints. So I don't think an animal killed that guy.
Devin, who was more of a skeptic, immediately dismissed any possibility of the culprit being a Bigfoot, assuring me the prints he saw were actually human. We agreed not to tell Mitch, who we heard talking on the radio as we neared the brook, or at least wait until he was freed. When we got closer, however, it became evident the radio chatter we heard was between Braden and Corey. Mitch was nowhere to be seen upon returning to the spot. While Devin called for Mitch, I found the radio laying at the base of a tree next to the muddy bank. Did Mitch throw the radio? I thought while staring at the device. I was about to fill in the static team on our current situation when Devin screamed my name and stumbled back from the brook, losing his footing and feverishly gesturing with his trembling finger as he stumbled. Following the direction he pointed, I dropped the radio and cupped my hands over my mouth. Sticking out from the mud were the bloody stumps of Mitch's severed legs.